Australian Government Summer School for Teachers of Mathematics was conducted at the University of New England in January 2008. 200 school teachers from across Australia came to hear high-profile presenters give keynote lectures and conduct workshops and seminars. Professor John Hattie, who's Professor of Education at the University of Auckland, gave a keynote on seeing through the eyes of students. John, I was wondering if you can tell us what were the main themes of the presentation.
Well, what I tried to do, Russell, was to argue the case that if you look at what works best in education, it turns out that everything works if your criteria is, do you want to improve achievement?
Right.
And so what we need to do is change the question and say, what are the things that work most effectively? What's at the top of the scale? And make some comparisons between the various things we do in schools. And the common theme to what accounts for the things that are at the top of the scale is when teachers see learning through the eyes of the students.
Right.
When they start to understand where the students are at, if they're being appropriately challenged, giving them feedback about where they're going at. And it's that kind of massive attention to the feedback and seeing learning through the eyes of the students and not seeing it through the eyes of the teacher, which is a big shift,
right.
But I think it's the one that seems to make the difference.
So how was the presentation relevant to the teaching of contemporary mathematics?
Well, the good news and the bad news on that is that what tends to work in mathematics tends to work across most subjects and vice versa.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of common themes across the subject matters. And I would like to hope that having domain knowledge and mathematics knowledge is really important, but much more important than that is how you're teaching the learning strategies of mathematics. Do you know the various strategies?
Yes.
If a student is having trouble with one strategy, do you have enough skill and domain knowledge to give them an alternative strategy? Or do you want them to learn the same strategy they're not succeeding with and do it more so they get it more wrong?
Yes.
So having multiple strategies. But to do that, you need to know what they actually are doing. It's tough in a classroom to know how all those 20 or 30 kids are, what they're stuck on.
Yeah.
It's different.
So were there some key ideas or issues that you were hoping the participants might take away from your presentation?
I think one of the key ones is making sure the tasks you give the kids are appropriately challenging. And try and get away from the notion that my job is to keep the kids engaged in interesting activities.
Right.
Now, yes, you'd want that too, but that's not what it's about. It's, are they a challenge, and what's your notion of challenge? Like, if you've done this particular thing in mathematics, what's the next appropriately challenging task for that kid? And that requires a lot of skill and knowledge, but you've constantly got to be in front of the kids and challenging. On the other side of it is you've got to have a lot of what I call deliberative practice. And that is multiple opportunities, usually over a period of time, to engage with those challenges, hopefully in different ways. Yeah. But most of us need 3 or 4 opportunities before we master something. Yes. And sometimes in our school systems we're so busy rushing through a curriculum that we give kids one chance. If they don't get it, we think, oh, they haven't got it. Sorry, we haven't taught it well.
Right. Yes.
And it's giving multiple opportunities, it's having that challenge, it's giving the kids the confidence to make errors.
Yes.
And that requires a classroom that is set up so that errors are okay.
That's right. This risk-taking has to be okay, and as you say, failure in a sense, or errors.
It's welcomed.
Welcome for both the students and the teachers.
Yes. And so it's the challenge, it's the feedback, and it's that deliberative practice. I think are pretty key elements of what works in our school systems.
Yeah.
But the other one, so I want to mention one more, which is kind of outside the classroom. It's the way in which you as a teacher ask the questions about how well you go and how you communicate that with other teachers. Right. Can you talk to other teachers about which kids you're struggling with? And do you? Can you talk to other teachers about their concept of what challenges? Yeah. I want a lot more of that.
Right. So what are the sorts of ideas that teachers might take back and implement in their classroom?
I would hope that one of the ones is that they go back with the notion that teaching is a very deliberate, intrusive kind of action. It's not a facilitative, guiding action, it's a directive kind of action. And I hope they go back with the notion of asking the question about, how do I know, what evidence do I know that I could be better? And they, in many ways, think of teaching as an intervention. And I'd like to see in classrooms, in schools, a lot more of teachers doing their own evaluations of what do the kids know now, what do the kids know later.
Yes.
Like Graham Nuttall's work, where he's shown that about 40% of everything we teach to kids, they know already. And I don't think that's good enough. And so it's a waste of time, quite frankly. And so how do we know, or can we set up as teachers interventions where we can look at what the kids know now, what they know 3 or 4 weeks later, what they know 4 or 5 weeks later. Not just pre and post, that's too crude. But we constantly, and what we're doing when we're doing that is we're getting information to us about how well we go.
Yes. So the assessment practices that teachers put in place have a very important role there for informing them about where to start in terms of what they're teaching and how to...
What the challenges, what the feedback is.
Sure. So the people who've been here at the summer school will have access to a range of resources that have been provided. Are there any other resources, websites or books that you might want to refer people to help them follow through these issues?
Yeah, one of the books that I was particularly taken to a few years ago, and I saw it when I was in England, is a book by Shirley Clark. And I liked it so much I asked her to write a New Zealand version, and she said no, but she made me write one. So we wrote a New Zealand version of it, and there is not an Australian version. And it's not so much the stuff we did, but the work that Shirley Clark's done. She's written some very good work on assessment to learn, on feedback. That's very useful. There's also an American, which is more academic, Robert Marzano. It's M-A-R-Z-A-N-O. He's certainly written some very good books based on the kind of things we're doing. And there's also a book in England by Jeff Petty, P-E-T-T-Y, that's written in teacher language. He understands schools a hell of a lot better than I do and how to write that way.
Yeah.
And so that would be some pretty good resources.
Great. All right. Well, look, thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Pleasure.